The rain tapped softly against the courthouse windows as people filled the wooden benches. It was a gloomy Monday morning, but inside the courtroom, the air felt even heavier. Quiet whispers floated through the room, echoing off the tall walls. All eyes turned to the front, where a young woman stood alone. Rachel Thomas, just 27 years old, clutched a folder tightly in both hands. Her black blazer was slightly too big, like it had been borrowed, and her hands trembled just enough for people to notice. She took a deep breath, trying to hide the fear behind her eyes. Across the room sat Martin Granger, dressed in a sharp, expensive suit. He leaned back in his chair like he owned the place. He was the CEO of Granger Tech, one of the biggest tech companies in the country. He didn't even look at Rachel. His lawyer, an older man with silver hair and a smug expression, glanced at her and whispered something to Martin. They both chuckled. Judge Whitmore, a man with tired eyes and a stiff gray robe, looked over his glasses at Rachel. "You're representing yourself?" he asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Rachel said, her voice clear but tight. The judge smirked. It was quick, but it was there. He leaned back, tapping his pen on the desk like this was already a waste of time. A low murmur passed through the crowd. People shifted in their seats, already guessing how this would end. A woman with no lawyer, a rich, powerful man with one of the best attorneys in the state. Rachel felt the weight of every stare. Still, she stood tall. No one knew what she was about to say, and no one knew the name that would change everything. Before stepping into the courtroom, Rachel's life had been very different. Just a year ago, she was a rising star at Granger Tech. She worked long hours, always pushing herself to prove she belonged. Her dream was to make a difference, to build something real, but then she saw something she couldn't ignore. Late one night, while finishing a project, Rachel stumbled upon secret documents. The company was moving money through a charity that didn't do what it claimed. It was a cover-up, a way to hide money that was stolen or worse. Rachel knew she had to speak up. She took the files to Human Resources, hoping they would stop the wrongdoing. Instead, her world started to fall apart. Within days, she was called into a meeting. They told her she was no longer needed. No warning, no chance to explain. Rumors spread. People said she was paranoid or unstable. Some whispered she was angry because she didn't get a promotion. Her phone stopped ringing. Her friends avoided her. She lost her apartment when she couldn't pay rent. Insurance, savings, all gone. She was alone, with only the truth she had collected. Rachel could have given up. Most people would have. But she didn't. She decided to fight back, not with fancy lawyers or money, because she didn't have either. She had evidence. And courage. Standing in that courtroom now, with the judge smirking at her, Rachel was fighting for more than just herself. She was fighting for justice. For the truth, and for anyone who ever felt powerless in the face of giants. Back in the courtroom, Martin's lawyer rose with a confident smile. His voice was smooth, filled with sharp words meant to cut Rachel down. "Your Honor, this woman is simply grasping at straws. She was an employee who got fired for poor performance. These so-called documents are nothing but desperate lies." The judge nodded, clearly on Martin's side. He glanced at Rachel with impatience. When she tried to explain, he interrupted her, saying, "Miss Thomas, this isn't a place for stories. Stick to the facts." Rachel felt the sting but kept her voice steady. She presented the emails she had saved, showing secret orders to move money through the charity. She laid out financial reports, carefully highlighted to show where the money disappeared. But the judge barely looked interested. He tapped his pen and yawned once, loud enough for some in the room to notice. The courtroom's mood shifted. People whispered that this case was already lost. Martin's lawyer laughed softly. "This is a sad attempt to bring down a successful company with false claims. Miss Thomas has no proof beyond hearsay." Rachel's heart pounded. Her hands wanted to shake, but she forced herself to stay calm. She knew the truth was on her side. The judge cut her off again. "Enough. We'll move on." It felt like the courtroom was against her. The bailiff avoided eye contact. The spectators stared at her like she was an outsider causing trouble. Rachel wondered if anyone believed her. Was this fight worth it? But then she remembered why she was here. This was not just about money or a job. It was about standing up to a system that protected the powerful and ignored the truth. And she wasn't done yet, because what she was about to say next would change everything. Rachel took a deep breath and asked the judge for permission to present one last piece of evidence. The courtroom grew silent. Everyone curious but skeptical. Judge Whitmore sighed, but nodded, clearly expecting nothing important. Then Rachel said the name. Elena Ramirez. The room froze. Martin's lawyer's confident smile vanished. His face went pale. Martin himself shifted uneasily in his chair. Did you say Elena Ramirez? Judge Whitmore asked, his voice sharper now. Rachel nodded, steady this time. Yes, Your Honor. Elena Ramirez is my aunt. She is a former federal investigator, who helped me gather and verify the evidence I presented today. Whispers broke out among the spectators. A few people looked shocked. The judge sat up straighter, his smirk gone. Rachel continued. She worked quietly behind the scenes, reviewing company records and confirming the illegal money transfers. She also helped me protect this information before I was fired. The judge looked at Martin's lawyer. Is this true? Martin's lawyer swallowed hard but said nothing. Rachel reached into her folder and handed the judge a sealed affidavit. This was prepared by Elena. It includes her official report and confirmation that the Department of Justice has received her findings. Judge Whitmore opened the affidavit carefully. His eyes scanned the pages quickly. The color drained from his face. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the room shifted completely. Martin's lawyer stammered, Your Honor, I request a recess to review this new evidence. The judge shook his head. Denied. We will continue. Rachel glanced at Martin and saw fear there for the first time. Elena Ramirez was a name no one in that courtroom could ignore. Because Elena had once worked with the judge on high-profile corruption cases. And her word carried weight. Rachel's quiet fight was about to get loud. And everything was about to change. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Judge Whitmore reread the affidavit. Elena Ramirez's words were sharp and clear. Proof that the case was more than just Rachel's claims. It was backed by an experienced investigator who had worked on some of the toughest corruption cases in the country. Martin's lawyer looked trapped. His usual confident smirk was gone, replaced by nervous glances. He whispered something to Martin, but the CEO sat frozen, eyes fixed on the judge. Rachel noticed the sudden shift. The man who once seemed untouchable now looked small. Judge Whitmore adjusted his glasses and said quietly, Miss Thomas. It appears this case requires a deeper look than I first thought. He stood and called the court to order. I am appointing a court investigator to immediately review the evidence in Elena Ramirez's report. This investigation will proceed without delay. The courtroom gasped. This wasn't how things usually went. Martin's lawyer pleaded for leniency, but the judge shook his head. Justice cannot be rushed, but it must be served. Rachel felt a mixture of relief and nervous excitement. She was no longer just a woman fighting alone. Now the law itself was watching. Later, as the court recessed, Rachel caught a glimpse of Judge Whitmore speaking quietly on the phone. His voice was low but firm, a tone she had never heard before. Elena Ramirez was more connected than anyone knew. She wasn't just Rachel's aunt. She was a force nobody wanted to cross. And suddenly Rachel understood how close she was to turning the tide. The powerful could no longer hide behind money and influence. Because sometimes the truth has its own powerful allies. And this was just the beginning. 6. Judge change of tone 300 words after the recess. The courtroom atmosphere was completely different. Judge Whitmore no longer looked bored or impatient. His eyes were sharp, focused on every word Rachel spoke. He addressed Martin directly. His voice firm. Mr. Granger, the evidence presented raises serious concerns. You will be expected to provide full cooperation during this investigation. Martin's confident smile was gone. He nodded stiffly, knowing the game had changed. Rachel could hardly believe it. The man who had dismissed her so easily was now demanding answers. Judge Whitmore turned to Rachel. "Miss Thomas, you have demonstrated courage and persistence. This court will take your claims seriously." For the first time Rachel felt seen. Not as a bitter ex-employee, but as someone standing for truth. The judge called for a detailed review of all documents. A court investigator was assigned to dig deeper into the company's records. Rachel noticed the surprise in Martin's eyes. Fear maybe. The courtroom that had once been hostile now buzzed with quiet whispers of change. Rachel's fight was no longer a lonely battle. She had broken through walls built by power and privilege. And in that moment, she understood something important. Justice doesn't always come easy. Sometimes it comes when someone refuses to give up. Rachel was no longer just defending herself. She was standing for anyone who had ever been silenced. And this was her victory. No matter what happened next. Weeks passed since that day in court. But the impact of Rachel's courage was just beginning to show. The Department of Justice opened a full investigation into Martin Granger and Granger Tech. News outlets caught wind of the story, and the company's stock started to fall. Martin was forced to step down as CEO. The board replaced him with someone new, promising a fresh start. Rachel received a settlement offer, large enough to change her life forever. But she refused. Money wasn't why she fought. Instead she accepted a job with a non-profit organization that protects whistleblowers, people like her who risk everything to tell the truth. Elena called her one afternoon. "I'm proud of you, Rachel. You stood your ground when no one else would." Rachel smiled, feeling stronger than ever. One day she received a letter from Judge Whitmore. It was a formal apology for doubting her and dismissing her early on. The judge admitted he had been wrong to underestimate her. Rachel kept the letter on her desk, a reminder of how far she had come. Her fight wasn't just about her anymore. It was about all the voices that needed to be heard. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, Rachel knew she would walk it with her head held high. Because sometimes the smallest voices can shake the biggest institutions. And sometimes saying one name changes everything. People often laugh at those who stand alone. They smirk. They doubt. They whisper. But truth has a power all its own. And sometimes all it takes is saying the right name at the right moment to change everything. Rachel Thomas's story reminds us that courage isn't about strength alone. It's about refusing to be silenced. Even when the world seems against you. And in that refusal, justice can find its way. Because when one voice rises, others will follow. And that's how change begins.